welcome everyone to a little bit of the Anji sesh for everyone. My name is Saki. Some people like to really say that he's really good, but honestly what they tend to not realize is Anji's entire game plan is very much focused on being a strong gimmick character. Once you exploit or explode the gimmick, it becomes a different type of matchup, not for you, but for the Anji, because now it's a test of whether or not you know what to do in that matchup, right? So today I'll be focusing on actually tackling a lot of the more obvious stuff with Anji. So for starters, Anjis right here this is like obviously their neutral zone, right? There's not much that they can do here except if you're like a longer range character. So sometimes, for example, as an Anji player, I'll go ahead and start off with like far slash, depending on what exactly the player is trying to do. This is usually like my round start options. Now notice though that this is like one of Anji's slowest moves, so you want to be very cautious about that. But note that you're going to see a lot of Anjis really try to get this button more often than anything. Also too, what will happen is a lot of Anjis will backdash. Why do they backdash? Well, the reason why they're backdashing is because whenever someone tries to whiff punish, or rather when someone tries to do a move, your goal is to always whiff punish them, especially if it's a move that that is like supposed to be very much focused on doing that round start. It has a high recovery, but because it's so far or there's like any pushback, it's usually like their default. So for example, in this case it's Testament's far slash. Anji doesn't really have a good whiff punishing tool. The only whiff punishing tool that you can actually kind of use is actually spin as Anji, and the reason behind that is because with Fujin, you'll be able to get a counter hit. So a lot of the times, that's why some Anjis will go right default into Fujin rather than going for spin. And if you don't know what's the difference between Fujin and spin, Fujin is the actual move that you'll see Anjis a lot of the time hit confirm and lead into all of these follow-ups, right? However, spin in general is when it's just the actual spin of itself. This is really important to kind of call out because with Anji's game plan, especially on like a layer 1 level, you don't know what's gonna come out until you start seeing the pattern of the Anji. Especially when the Anji is doing like this, or the Anji is doing like to try to get Ko, or when the Anji is trying to actually dance in your face like that. The reason why you want to know what they're trying to do is because this can either help you prepare for them to be actually counter hit, or you want to just grab them. Now usually the base default for people is that when they do spin, the reason why you want to know what they're trying to do is because your first thought whenever you see an Anji spin is grab, right? Why? Because that is a move that is so susceptible to grabbing you. If you have a command grab, if you have a grab, just go for it, right? So we'll go ahead and record this real quick so we could see what I'm trying to get at. So whenever you see this move, you want to grab it, right? Now obviously easier said than done, but what happens when they're trying to do, for example, like Fujin, is if you're trying to go for the grab, if you're not timing it properly, so for example here I am, that's a good start because I saw the startup, but if like let's say I try to go for I like delay it slightly, I'm getting counter hit, and that's the mind game off of just regular spin and Fujin, is that you want to be conscious of that, and you kind of want to play around with like, okay, what is the Anji trying to do? Is the Anji just trying to play spin in neutral, or is the Anji trying to actually start up their combos and actually begin their pressure? Because usually what happens is when the Anji starts to get into like this corner, that's where he wants to be, because that's where he's the most scariest, right? He's scarier in that corner because of that reason. Because he can do this, he can do this, and then start with like close slash pressure. In fact, let's go ahead and actually show you like what Anji like looks like in the corner more than anything. It's always good for like these types of sessions to like really show that off, because one of the reasons is you want to like, you don't, in a real match you don't get to see you don't get to see like what Anji does, or rather what happens when you're getting like mixed all of the time. Like, you think you're like, okay, I know how to handle this mix, I got this, but then you're like, you still keep getting hit by the mix, you still keep getting hit by the shimmies. So with Anji, he can do this and mix you up. He can do this, and then he can get this going and then keep this pressure, and it's like not a fun time, right? He can also try to go for this. Usually when an Anji, some Anjis will be really aggressive. You can tell how aggressive they are if they're right on round start, or like in the first round already going for this. If they're going for overheads, you have a better time understanding what exactly they're trying to do and how aggressive they're going to be. So you can actually call out some of the stuff. So for example, right? And then let's go ahead. And then you can just like punish. Actually, first off, this follow-up that you see him doing here, the Ichishiki, is plus on block, right? Kind of scary. Definitely not a fun time, because if you try to backdash, he could do 6H. If you try to press the button, he can literally do Fujin. It's not a good time, okay? However, what if he was this close, right? As you see here, I'm going to show you what happens when he's that close. You can 6P that. That's the first one. So whenever Anji is that close and he's doing that to you, even if it's on a follow-up, just 6P that. As soon as you see him in the air. That Ichishiki is like not even coming out. And look how, well, Sensman has a godlike 6P. But if, let's say, you had like a 6P like, I don't know, like even Inos, you'll still be able to hit that pretty well. Right? Another thing that will happen too is, let's go ahead and actually show you, that's just the, like for that specific part, that's just something that you want to get in your head. This is the biggest thing here when you come for practice. Biggest thing in your head is have an answer. Just go straight through, see that move, automatically 6P. Now you're probably wondering, but wait a minute, what if they're a little farther? Or what if I want to try to be more optimal? Well, that depends on the character that you're trying to play as. So go ahead and... Right, if I call it out early, I can definitely get a punish that's like more optimal and a better Oki situation than just going ahead and, for example, doing 6P. Right? Here I could obviously set for Crow, but again, more optimal, that's what you want more than anything when you're trying to go up against something. Now, again, layer 1, just 6P if you see it. Don't try to be too crazy. Get used to the reaction of it, and then add that sauce to it. Add the actual optimal combo. If you're, for example, Kai or any character with a DP, that's your chance to DP. You should not be afraid to DP while you are getting hit by any Fujin follow-up. That is a perfect example to get out of that corner, get to the DP, and get yourself out of there. Now, but what if you're, for example, someone like Jacko that unfortunately doesn't really have the most optimal damage when it comes to trying to catch that DP, or not DP, that follow-up, right? So I'm gonna show you the next thing. You can grab him. But more than anything is that you don't want to let Anji get away with this. That is not a good time, because to explain to you what happens when an Anji gets that move down packed or onto that plus, is that's telling us you don't know the matchup, and therefore we can continue to gimmick you out. We can continue to catch you off guard. We can continue to do all the things that what makes Anji scary, quote unquote, and allows us to actually win the match, versus you could have just blown that up and now I'm trying to think, how do I get my plus frames to take my turn back? So that's something to keep in mind. Let's talk a little bit about another gimmick or another character. Sorry, not another character. Another move that a lot of people get really scared of. And this is going to be... Notice how that frame trap didn't work? All I had to do was just 2p. That's because it all depends if the Anji can frame trap. How can you tell whether or not the Anji frame trapped? Well, obviously it's going to be quite a not a fun time if you don't have burst, right? But this would be a good opportunity for you to burst, or I would actually tell you to do something a little more daring. You could go burst that too. That's actually pretty huge if you can get that. So why am I telling this? Because Butterfly, even though it can get scary, it's actually just mash. Like legit, just every time you see it, mash through it. Especially if you have a character that has a TP, just do the DP. What's gonna happen? You might get hit by the second part of the Butterfly, but that's not gonna do anything because no Anji's confirming off of that unless you're like freaking maybe Macmans or Uigui or even Jiro, and they're not even hit confirming it. When Anjis bring this out, they'll either go for this, or they'll go for like a Fujin, or they'll do like so for example, something that I like to do when I've conditioned an opponent quite often is I'll do this and I'll do something like this and then try to hit confirm. Or for example, because some people are like I mentioned, they'll try to do the low slash to try to catch you off guard. Butterfly is not an overhead or a low, it's actually a mid. So really, realistically, you do not have to block this low. You just need to keep an eye out if the Anji's trying to do Nagiha. When I've tried to actually implement my Oki situations with Anji and Butterfly, what I will do is I'll bring this out and then I will actually do the overhead. Now, you're probably thinking, well, this second hit, right? You're gonna get hit by it and then you're gonna get hit by the overhead. And you would think, oh, double plus frames. But no, actually, that's still grabbable. So I'm gonna try to show you that like right now so you could see what I mean by that. You can actually still hit through that. That's the biggest thing that people get scared of when they see that Butterfly. They're thinking, oh, it's Anji's turn. It's very, very bad. It is a very, very bad move. I even had time to do like heavy slash. Like that's how bad it was. I can even grab through that, right? Even if you block it, right? Overhead is still punishable. That's not his turn. So that's something that you definitely want to keep an eye out from players that are like really heavy on the Butterfly and they're trying to like mix you up. If they're not doing Nagiha, don't even bother blocking low until they actually show that card. And if they're trying to get that overhead right after into the Butterfly, punish the heck out of them. Get that counter hit. Don't be afraid to press the button. Especially with a character like Testament that has like a pretty good close slash, but it is still a pretty big hitbox range. You don't let them get away with it.